you're not working from home, you are home during a crisis trying to work. So I want you to tell me what you think about that. What's the difference, or what do you notice? So true, isn't it? It's such a different story. I don't know if there's anyone here that works from home normally, if this is a normal thing for you, but it is temporary. Yeah, working from home is often temporary. So working from home generally, you know, if I say in the HR world, we say telecommuting, you could say virtual working, remote working, but often working from home is just, gosh, I got to get this report done. I'm just going to go home, hunker down while the kids are at school, if you have any. Pets are taken care of. My dog's usually at a daycare twice a week to get the energy of a 1-year-old out. So it's really a different scenario. And I think that's the key we really have to focus on here, because a lot of us are feeling guilt. A lot of us are feeling not sure about, you know, how should I do this? You know, my boss doesn't have kids. Are they going to understand when my kids come in, or the cat walks across the laptop? How is this going to work? Right? And you talked about the bubble. Someone just mentioned the bubble at home, right? What is our bubble at home? Some of us are going to have more of a relaxing bubble, and other ones are not going to have a relaxing bubble. So it's a very big difference. We really have to recognize that. And we have to recognize that it happens. So Professor Kelly, I don't know if you saw this. This is from 2017, up on the right-hand side there. But he was doing a live interview on BBC. I'd seen this after the fact, not on the BBC. But his kids actually came in the back. And it was such a great video. You can look it up online. And then his wife comes in and tries to nab the kids. So it was just really, really funny. And I think the outcry from the world was like, it's okay, life happens. And I think that's what we really have to start thinking about, is that this is okay. And it actually, believe it or not, can be a really good thing. So the dog down below, I have a golden retriever, so I like this photo. So yes, the dog coming in, I've been in her kennel with her, trying to calm her down on a call, you know, when the kids are occupied outside or in the backyard or whatever. So it's a total crazy world that we're in today. But I think the key is that knowing how can we take advantage of this, like seeing and colleagues of ours, friends of ours, seeing the kids, seeing the dogs, seeing the cats, you know, noticing what they're doing. Maybe they're crafting. I don't know, whatever the heck it is. It's nice to have that social connection. It helps with the anxiety that we're feeling. It helps us come together. It helps us realize that we're all in the same situation, even though our bubbles may be a little bit different. So I just, you know, I was trying to think of how to frame it. So I said, work is now at home. So how can home now be part of work? How can we make this a part of it? Now, I do know in some of your worlds, and you can let me know, but so the insurance board, I guess, has come out with, we're going to reduce premiums. I don't know if this is affecting the calls from clients, or, you know, premiums might be going down. You might get a break off your premiums, or all these sorts of pieces of coming in. But my brother, who's in the industry as well, said there's a lot of calls coming in to companies and brokers trying to figure out how can I have reductions. So it's not only, you know, the fact some industries are going to be a little quieter, and people are kind of wondering, what can I do? I'm just curious. Do you find, yeah, lots of calls and emails, someone said there. So that's the piece. It's going to stay busy for you guys. I mean, you're in almost an essential service when it comes right down to it. So you're going to be busy, some of you more than others, depending on how client facing you are. So, you know, that's the piece to start thinking about. You got to think about how you get your work done, how you manage it in your own little bubble, and how you manage it and actually stay mentally intact at the same time. So try to think about how you integrate it in a way, and don't feel guilt about it, right? Your life happens. You might have to take a break because of anxiety, or go out and have a walk and not get back to someone right away, or you might need to do something. So just remember, it's part of our life right now, and that's every single one of us. So if we look at, sorry, technology here, there we go. So what are the benefits? Now, some of you, this isn't really virtual working. It's a temporary working from home. But what are some of the benefits that you guys are noticing? It's so stressful and anxious, but I bet you there's been something that you've enjoyed. What's one thing that you've enjoyed in terms of virtual working? PJs. Yeah, the guilt's bad. I get it, but you got to let that go. We're all in the same boat. Sleeping in is a good thing. Having supper done, I love that, because I thought about, you know, oh gosh, you're at work and you're like, oh, I didn't take the chicken out for dinner. Now I'm going to have frozen chicken when I get home, right? There are things to try to think about. Head home in 15 seconds, I love it. So how do we take advantage of it as best we can? And how, moving forward, do we embrace some of this? Because I would bet that at the end of the day, because we're right in the middle of the crisis right now, sooner than later, and I'm optimistic, we're going to be talking about how do we move forward after this? What are the great learnings we can have from this? Whether it happens again or also just in the world of work that we're in right now, right? We miss our coworkers. So, you miss the connections, you miss these pieces. So how do we start doing them in a bit of a different way? So some of the things you see, like when I've worked with teams before on virtual remote working, so you'll have people, whether it's working in different departments, like whether you're, like when I worked in a broker, you've got, okay, so who's in the broking side, who's in the client service side, sometimes you're geographically separated, sometimes you're not. I mean, there's ways that we actually work virtually anyway, even on the same floor. If you have a massive floor of people that you're sending emails, you're actually doing a lot of virtual work. So the fact is that you guys have been continuing meeting your client needs or your internal client needs. We're staying safe. That's always helpful. Definitely the travel time, as someone mentioned, it's 15 seconds to get to work. And family responsibilities, right? It's tough, more tough on some. If your kids are a little older, maybe it's not so much. If you don't have kids, maybe it's a little different if you got pets instead. They can be just as challenging in certain ways. So increased job satisfaction overall. So if you actually look at, I just got a couple of studies that I actually took note of. So there's one study that was done from the WHU Otto Weissman School of Management. So it says that dispersed teams can actually outperform those that are in a shared space. That's on one study from 2009, it's a little older. But then another more recent one from Ann Consulting said that virtual teams can improve employee productivity, and some seem to have gains up to 43%. That's not the world we're in today. That's not our bubbles today. But again, how do we look at it in the future? How do we take advantage of this down the road? I like to start thinking about after a little bit to think of from a positive perspective. So accessing talent, so who can you access? Do they have to be physically located with you? And of course, the real estate costs for sure. But those are just some general ones, not necessarily where we are today. So what do we do when we're working from home? Oh, I love that. Sorry, cats don't understand why I'm in their space daily. Yes, my dog actually had a little bit of a trauma. She couldn't settle down all day long, so she was getting a little agitated. So I get it. Even the kids and dealing with their anxieties can be very stressful. So get up and go to work. So I can't remember if you can see me here or not, if my video's on or not, but if it is, that's great. If not, that's fine too. So getting up and go to work. So that means, sorry, PJs, in an ideal world, you get up, you have your shower, you have your breakfast, do whatever you need to do, and you actually go into the space that you're working in. So it doesn't mean you have to be in a suit. It doesn't mean you have to be in something, maybe not the PJs. Maybe you treat yourself once a week on the PJs. Someone said their husband's retiring and it's finding it hard. Actually, one of my best friends just retired last week, so she's finding it extremely challenging. So how do you get up and go to work, right? What does that look like to you? It could mean you put your sweats on, that PJs, could be slippers. I'm not saying it can't be that. Just saying you got to think about what it means to mentally get into the frame of mind of work as best you can. So make your space your own. Some of you are going to have to rotate around. When I first started working from home, 2 or 3 times a week, a number of years ago now, I found, and we'll talk about ergonomics after, but I was kind of all over the place. And I finally gutted out our extra room we had, and I've got an office space now. So it does make a difference to have a space, whatever that space may look. It could be a card table. In a section of the house, whatever it might be. So try to make it your own a little bit, put maybe pictures out if you're so inclined, whatever it might be. And recognize that your bubble is different than other people's bubbles. So the productivity, the way that they're going to be able to respond, the timeliness of the response is really significant for some. So for me, for example, if I'm trying to help my kids with their schoolwork or whatever that looks like these days, trying to walk the dog an hour and a half a day on top of everything work-related. Now, I'm not as busy as you are, obviously, in terms of the need for your services out there. But having said that, it is a lot. So having meetings and project deadlines, it's tough. And actually, my mom just went in hospital. So it's very, you know, our bubbles can be very complicated. So really having some empathy for people, really saying, okay, if they don't respond right away, that's not the end of the world. Understanding that they're on a call and they have to scoot off and you don't know why, not to make any judgments, just to trust that they're doing the best they can. Take lunch with each other. I've done this a couple of times. I've done it with some friends too. I got my friend's 50th birthday coming up. We're going to do a big, you know, monster lunch with a whole, or dinner, I should say, with a bunch of people online. So how do you, if you miss your colleagues, who are the people that you chat with? Who do you have, you know, chat at the water cooler, so to speak? You have lunch with, you chat at their office. Grab a muffin, grab a coffee, have a virtual lunch or a coffee date. Right? You might not be able to walk into their office or their cubicle, but you can certainly send them a line through the technology, whatever you may be using, to actually have a lunch date or just to check in and see how they are. So just try to think about that. How can you do that? And it's incredible how much it makes a difference. And I say that from personal experience as much as my clients as well. And it gives us a time. Some of us are more work oriented and we don't, which I'll talk about later. We have to really start our conversations and our meetings a little bit differently than we used to, not right down to business. But how do you actually take that core time just to see how people are doing and see their cat and see their kids and do all that sort of stuff? It makes us feel connected and less alone. Routine's important. Now, I know, my bubble, I get it, it's crazy. But can you have some level of routine? Is there something that you can do that has a routine element to it? It could be between these 2 hours, kids, I can't connect with you. Or do you know, walk the dog a certain time, then go for your 2 hours? Or, you know, for example, trying to talk to my mom in hospital, we're setting up a routine of a timing that we're doing that. So setting up those times are really important. It gives you a sense of structure for those of you that like structure. And for those that don't, it does give you a sense of purpose. You know, when you wake up in the morning, what have I got to do today? It's not just fluid and all over the place, which can cause a lot of stress for many of us. So routine is really important. And be flexible. Some people aren't going to be able to commit to the time that you're hoping they commit to, okay? So try to be flexible, try to be comfortable with others, and check in with people, right? Some people are going to be more savvy with technology. It could be a phone call. It could be a text, whatever it might be. Check in with others and see how they are. Just a simple, how you doing, what's new in your world, can make all the difference, okay? So just check in with some, especially ones that maybe not as chatty as others, just to make sure they're okay. Or send them a picture or something silly is always fun too. Humor is huge, as you know, many of you know, and this time of our lives with everything that's going on. So about you, so here's the kicker. You know, you're trying to manage all these things, you're trying to get this done, get that done, take care of these people, take care of those people. But what you really got to think about is yourself. You know, the typical concept of, and I've said to you before, for those who've heard me on these calls, is the oxygen, right? On the plane where they say, have it for yourself first and give it to someone else after. You really need to do that. That's really significant for us to be able to get through this. And God forbid, knock on wood, any of us did get sick. Having our sense of well-being and the healthier we are mentally as much as physically does make a difference. So it's a win-win for everyone. So exercise. Now, pray to God. I think in France, I think it was France or somewhere, they just cut out going outside. Like you're not allowed to go out to exercise or go out to anywhere. And I thought that was just mind-boggling. I think for all of us in Atlantic Canada, I think we're really lucky because chances are there's going to be sections where they're just not going to cut off the woods, going out in the woods or a back trail here or there. But yeah, how do you exercise? Is it inside? Is it outside? How do you get that done? Understand your own emotions. And I think you're going to have another session on stress, so I won't get into this too much, but understanding that you cannot take care of everyone else. You have emotions yourself. You are not impenetrable. Recognizing where's your level of anxiety, where's your level of stress. Even the calmest people and the most extraordinary leaders that I've worked with are really feeling it now. So recognizing that, having someone to talk to is really, really important. Talking about it, sharing it, if you're a leader of people, sharing your vulnerability. We want to stay positive and strong, but we also want to make sure that we show when we need support. Okay, so, and then we've got, I can't see my picture. Yes, the news. So the news, be careful with watching the news. I know I try to limit mine. I don't know how about you guys, but how many people are watching the news a lot? Are there any people, like I used to be a big news person. I'd watch the news, I'd check in the mornings. I'm finding it quite stressful. And when you check a psychologist and everything, just watch what you need to watch and then get off it and distract yourself into something else. This is where I know Netflix is becoming very popular with all this going on. So be careful with the news. Another way to think about it is we're stuck inside. Now, if I said to you 6 months ago, what would you do if you had a couple of months of hanging out at the house and working from home? What would you say, right? So how can you see it from a positive perspective? How can I finally focus more on myself and my family? How can I not worry so much about getting the lunch packed in the morning, or getting my own lunch packed to go off to work, or get through the commute, or worry about traveling in the snow, or whatever it is. So start thinking about how can you reframe it for yourself? What are the advantages where if you look back on it, I've said this to people, some of my coaching clients, okay, let's think about it. You're looking back at this 6 months down the road. Let's hope there's a vaccine and it's all over. What do you look back and say, gosh, I wish I'd taken advantage of? So how do you start thinking about it from that perspective? And we are going to hit walls, okay? And I know most of you are going to have employee assistance programs you can take advantage of. There's mental health crisis lines. There's just friends and family, talking to others, understanding when the anxiety starts to come up. What do you need to do if that happens, okay? So has anyone tried things outside? So this exercise, what else are you guys doing to relax, right? How are you actually making that happen? So just put in the chat, give some suggestions. Like one thing I know, meditation, if you haven't tried, there's lots of meditation apps out there. Don't say no, give it a try. It does work tremendously. Guided meditations, if you're someone that thinks in your head too much. Yoga classes, there we go. So how do you actually start thinking about how you do it for yourself? And no harm, no foul. You need to go, and you need to go now to go out and get rid of some of that stress for your clients and your team to get some work done. Just do it. There's no guilt, because that's actually the best thing you can do for yourself and the organization. Crocheting, oh, my daughter would love me to teach her, and I have no idea how. So if you give lessons, Penny, let me know. So here's the thing. You're all at home. How many people have office set up at home? Like, are there people here that generally work from home? They've got, someone said earlier they missed their desk. Bob Ross painting, I love that. So here's the piece. When you think about ergonomics, this is really important. When I started working from home years ago, I ended up doing damage to my neck. I was at the sofa, I was moving to the dining room table, then I was moving over here, there, and everywhere. You really have to think about what it needs to be for you. Okay, so I have a neck injury now, so I'm in a standing desk. And again, how do you make do with what you have? There's some amazingly creative people out there. The one thing I will say about ergonomics, you can go online, you can look up all of these things like I've got showing you here. Not everyone has the perfect chair, not everyone has this, but how do you jury rig it to the law of right angles? So just keep thinking right angles, right? Where's the screen to your head? Are your arms at right angles? Are your knees at right angles? Can you put pillows under your feet, whatever it needs to be to get that done? I've got a couple of pictures here of some people. Now, these are a couple of funny ones, but still, I thought it made a point. How do you be a little creative? How do you actually show that you can show the right levels, the right heights for everything, and be creative with what you have in your house? I wouldn't necessarily suggest this one because it's particular, but I thought I'd show something from a little humor perspective. The next one is most interesting because this person has decided to do a little hoarding. But point being, a little humor, but the point is that it's at a level that makes sense for them, right? Laptops are a little more challenging because laptops, you can't get the proper right angle on your arms. In an ideal world, there'd be a keyboard as well. One of my clients actually, I was talking to yesterday, and lots of clients have done this, but he said specifically he actually let each of his team go into the office one by one as appropriate to get all their stuff so they could take home, I'm not saying you need to do this, but they could take home their keyboard, their screens are huge. So the laptop screens are never quite the same. They could bring home their screens to attach so they're not hunching over, because that's going to create some long-term potential side effects. So yeah, someone took their chair. A chair is a huge one. Yeah, unless you're in a standing desk, it's a huge one. So this is what my brother did. I asked him if I could show this last night. So he said it was fine. This is my brother working from home. His son jury-rigged it. And I know it looks a little funny, but he does it he uses this. He's actually in the insurance industry. And he uses this every day. So I just thought I'd show you what you can do if you want to be a little creative, because he has a stand-up desk at work. So he was used to doing it. So just think about it. Think about how you can actually be creative with what you have, which I know in Atlantic Canada, we're really good at that stuff. So see what you can do. All right, so teams. Let's get into a few more things on how we work within organizations. So with regard to teams, that's just a definition of virtual teams. So we're dispersed. We are working with telecommunications, information technologies. We're trying to get our work done as best we can. It's a new way of working. We're not having a social connection. It's not an ideal scenario. It's not like we're setting this up from scratch and we're doing it all slowly and methodically. This is a, you know, pretty wham bam, here it is situation. But just let's start talking about some things you can do. So skills of technology and processes. So how do people work virtually? Do they have the skills to do so? Do they know how to do it? Do they have the technology, which of course everyone's heard a lot about? And are there processes that need to go in place? So we'll walk through some of these as well. Now, good attitude, technology. So you have to be a little, if you're not really good at technology, you got to try to embrace it. Some technologies are super incredibly easy, others not so much. There's lots of different platforms out there. I know everyone's, you know, there's pros and cons now from a Zoom. We're on GoToMeeting today. There's Zoom as well. There's Microsoft, which is taken off with a vengeance because of the free aspect of it, but there are some security elements that everyone's heard about as well. If not, you can check it online. The FBI sent out a warning about that. There are ways to mitigate it, but just keep an eye. Microsoft Teams, I know, is taken off really heavily too. So WebEx is another one people use. So just start looking at the different technologies. I'm not an expert in these. Decide on one or two you're going to use and just work with those. Offer some training sessions, show people how to use it. You've got to have one super user in your team or your organization that can start offering support. There's lots on YouTube, but for some of us that are a little older, we can try it, but sometimes we just need to tell us someone to show us how to do it. And it could be online or whatever it might be. So think about that from an organizational perspective. So you may not have an IT department, but there's probably somebody who knows how to use it. Even at the beginning of a meeting that you can do some practice around how to pull up the whiteboard, how to do polling, you know, all the things that you can do with these technologies. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong with technology. As you saw, actually, it's funny, I couldn't have planned it a little bit better. There's a lot of technologies. We're finding our meetings now are, if you have a half-an-hour meeting, 10 minutes is trying to figure out the technologies. So how do you sort of get on top of that as an organization to sort of say, here's what we're using, here's some YouTube things you can check out. Let's just test a few things right at the beginning of our meeting. And provide feedback to people, you know, what's working, what isn't working. So very quickly, I know this seems, some of you might know all of this stuff, but it's incredible how much I see in terms of productivity going down the drain when it comes to technology. So we've got audio problems. So can you switch to the telephone? Are there other ways that you can actually communicate? There's raising hand, which we won't do it all today, and there's other times you can do a technology session. But you know, there's a raise your hand function. There's functions in almost all of these, like I'm gonna, you know, coffee break, or basically probably got to do a bio break. Just going to be back in a minute. You can sort of say why you're not there, why someone's talking. You know, oh, I'll just talk in a minute. I'll raise my hand. That's for larger meetings, but you just have to start thinking about that. Sharing screens, send people documents in advance. The other thing is too, video is great. Obviously, we have too many people to do video here today. Video is great to connect. Certain technologies are better than others. Some of them will show everyone on the screen. Other ones will only take 3 or 4 at a time. I think Teams will only show 3 or 4 at a time. So again, decide what makes sense for you, and it connects as many people as you can. But when in doubt, you know, people are going to get a bit distracted. Don't get too upset with people if they're distracted. Now, if they're on their phone, that's a different story. The video connection helps. The technology is saying, I've got to be back in a minute. If you see someone flying out, don't judge them because they flew out of their the screen for a minute because maybe they have a kid or something happening over there. But again, set ground rules around it. What does it look like? Again, this could be don't judge people if they can't. How do you keep people in the loop? So if they miss some of, for example, if they missed some of this call and it was important to them, who's going to actually bring them up to speed when they get back on? So my kid needs something, or there's a fight between my 2 girls, as an example, I have to rush out for 2 or 3 minutes. Then if I come back, is someone going to notice? Can they bring me up to speed? Am I going to lose a lot of information that I need to have? Okay. So visuals, whiteboards, pictures, images, your verbal skills, right? Asking questions and just listening. It's a little daunting for some people because I've done a lot of global facilitating where it's across different continents even, and you just have to ask questions and wait, right? Wait for the team to think. You can't often see them, and even if you can see them on a screen, it's never quite as good. You don't quite know. So asking questions and just listening to people, waiting for them to speak up, really understanding that some people prefer the chat than speaking up. I mean, speaking up on a call with maybe 20 people or less or more could be really scary for someone. That could be very outside their comfort zone, and you might lose all the great things they have to say. So how to use the technology? Maybe someone says something through the chat, right? Are there different mechanisms you can use? No different than our kids in schools, different ways to learn. These are different ways to communicate that are comfortable for people. Sending people things in advance so they can think about it in advance. In terms of, there's polls, you can use on most of these as well to ask questions if you have a really large group, or if it's even just a check-in to sort of say, you know, say you have 40 people in your organization and it's just a little poll at the beginning of a company-wide meeting, you know, where is everybody's level of stress or anxiety right now, or, you know, how's everyone feeling, and having a little poll that people can click a button anonymously and come up and say percentages of what it is. So how do you actually use those? There's whiteboards, there's chat, agendas are super important. Don't underestimate. We're going to have a little bit of 95% of the time these days, most of the meetings have a little bit of banter, right? About we're trying to connect. We have to have that social connection. That's significant. But then how do you get into the agenda, and what does that look like? How do people own those roles? Like, for example, imagine if I didn't have the support of these wonderful people with IBANs to get me set up and get the audio fixed up today. Right? It would have caused chaos. So what are the different roles you can use? If you have a larger meeting, can someone keep an eye on the chat, right? So how do you do that? How do you keep track of time? Does it make sense? Does it make a difference? So different types of communications. Now, I'm not going to go through this in depth. You can have a quick look through. There's different ways to communicate. I've said to many of you before that have ever heard me speak is that email is a terrible form of communication, okay? So email, there's the ability to judge or misinterpret on email is extraordinary. Short and simple things, to the point, informational only, nothing extensive, unless it's a report someone has to read in an attachment. Emails themselves should be quite short. You don't want to have too much in there. It shouldn't be emotionally driven in any way or have the perception thereof, because otherwise people will read into it. And we do not want to cause stress amongst our teams and our colleagues. So is there instant messaging? That's really fabulous. Depending on what system you use, make sure you have some way to instant message to each other. Great way to socially connect. Simple little note out to the team. Hey guys, you know, struggling with this report or whatever, how's everyone else doing today? Simple little things that can create such a great connection, and it could be work related or personal, depending how it is appropriate for you. There's online meeting platforms that we've talked about, and file sharing is another huge one to look into for now or into the longer term, so that you're not emailing back and forth monstrous numbers of if you don't have access to servers, as an example. So in terms of people that lead others, and this could be things that you could suggest to your leaders as well if you don't have any direct reports yourself. So we've talked about how aligning, coordinating people, technology, those sorts of things, the right types of communication, the right type of technology. But we've also got to look at, you know, how do we build the informal elements, right? So that connection, that social connection is going to, ironically, for those of you that are really like, let's just go get the work done, that's actually going to create more productive work. It's going to create a team that is more engaged. So how do you do that? So you always have to have the one-on-ones. So as a leader, or if your leader isn't, reach out to them. Say, you know, hey, I just want to check in, let you know how I'm doing, make sure I'm working on the right stuff, or talk about some challenges that are happening. Touch points as teams are significant. So how often are you meeting as a team? Anybody here, you can put in there, is there a daily touch point, weekly touch point? What are you doing as teams? Now, teams could be just your department. It could be a mini client team. It could be like a different type of, like, is it the broker team, whatever it is. Yeah, so some people have weekly chats. Again, if you find things are going off the rails, how do they get ramped up? If you find the stress level of the team is up there, how do you ramp that up? Maybe it's you all have a team lunch on the Friday and everyone brings their stuff in. Whatever it is, you need to have those touch points at least once a week. How do you actually have those little icebreakers? I mean, they're so easy to do these days, you know, whether it's a picture of something or something you've been doing or your silly desk that you put together, how do you actually do that, right? And again, your lunches, which I talked about, and bring guests in. This is another great thing. I've done it with, I actually did it with a client. They asked me to come just sit in on their meeting and have a little chat. but also it's other people. Maybe it's another department. I know you guys are busy. Some organizations that aren't as busy, how to use this as a learning opportunity. If you find your department's not as busy, or is there someone from one of the companies that could talk to you about something, right? Is there some way you can actually draw in other people as well? So in terms of other people, this is where it gets, in terms of individuals and leading people, you kind of know, some of you are going to know exactly what you need to do. Maybe you're the client manager and you're just working the clients, right? You're making sure everyone's okay, you're processing, you're talking to them about this reduction in premium, which I can only imagine that's going to bring in a lot of questions. So understanding tasks are clear. Everyone needs to have objectives. The objectives, and I'll show you in a minute about what they could look like. But again, objectives should be set on a weekly, daily basis. Individually, when you wake up in the morning, you should set some reasonable objectives. We as humans are goal driven. So to get you up in the morning and get you focused at work, it could be to do A, B, and C. It could be, I'm going to call this one client that's really critical today. I'm going to reach out to a team member. I got to reach out to the broker on this. I got to reach out to the client manager on this. Whatever it might be, it's really significant to have some objectives set. Set them as a team. All right, set them as individual, but recognize you have to be somewhat flexible. Things happen. My mom just had a stroke and went in hospital. Things happen, which put like 2 days is just toast, right? Justifiably, but it means we have to be flexible to everyone's own individual bubble these days. Check in with them. If you're going to delegate to people, make sure it's done appropriately, it's clear, it's concise, you're available. Now here's the other thing. How are you available as a leader or as a person? Like, when am I available? When do I know my boss is going to be available, right? Am I going to be sending emails and they're just caught in limbo and I haven't heard back from somebody yet? So understanding what those are and making sure your team or your boss tells you what their availability is. So in terms, I call it team charter. So I'll just put these all up here. So team charter, it could be rules of engagement, whatever it might be. How are you going to work? So actually sit down as a team. Now the leader of the team may have some things that they want to do, but how do you work it as a team? So how do you sort of say, how often are we going to communicate? What are we going to talk about? What if we run into problems? What if there's some conflict? How do we deal with those? How do I get a hold of people, right? How do we make decisions? If we've got to make a decision on something and I can't get a hold of somebody, what happens? So how do we make those decisions? Who's responsible? How do we do them? Those are things that you can look at for now and into the future. Because if we ever have this down the road, you really need to understand how those things are done. In crisis management, it's just somebody's going to make the call. Over time, though, we want to have input into decisions that are getting made. We want to be able to know that we've got a voice. Okay, so how do you do that with the team? How do they have it? What about giving feedback? What's working? What isn't? How is everyone feeling? Those are significant in terms of asking that and expecting people to answer it as well. And conflict, right? How does that get? And again, that's a whole other conversation, but how do you deal with that virtually? How do you notice? How is a leader, who's really good in the team, who would notice if something might be a little off? It could be work related, it could be home related, whatever it is, this is time to watch out for your team. So that was just for goals. If anyone hasn't seen the FAST, we all know SMART goals. But frequently, this is a FAST is another way of looking at it. You discuss these goals all the time. They're a little bit of stretch, given the situation. They're not going to be as the stretch as it was before. They're very specific and they're transparent. So you talk about them, they're clear and they're set. And they actually, believe it or not, you might think, oh, I don't want someone set objectives. It actually gets us empowered and actually engaged. So lastly, I just want to close out. My dear, time flies, doesn't it? We'll close out in a minute. But I want you to talk about like what's working. Now, I've talked to you about resilience before, and this slide just came up in my head when I was putting this together around, boy, this is so significant now. What are the, and it's sort of synopsis of what we've talked about, but also as a team, how do we actually work as a team? So when you look at keeping resilient teams, all I can say right now is everybody in the world is in an incredible amount of stress, but there's an incredible amount of resilience out there. And the question would be, how long can we sustain it, right? So anything we can do for our teams, whether you're it's a colleague to colleague or to your direct report or to your boss. So quickly, I'll just run through these. So I'm not sure if let me get my technology working here. There we go. So expectations, set them. Make sure they're set and make sure you communicate them. If you cannot meet expectations, make sure you reach out immediately. Something's happened. I'm going to be off on that. This goes with clients, bosses, and your team members. right? Some things you can control. I know our world feels so out of control right now. So all you can do is focus on what you can. You can focus on yourself. I've talked to you about this before, your own emotions and your own behavior. But there's other things you can control as well, right? Can you impact a client a certain way? Can you reach out? What is it you actually can do, even though you're not at the office or you don't have the same supports as you had before? Setting goals, listening and encouraging, self-awareness, encouraging creativity. How do we make this work? And if, as an industry, and I was in the industry as well, it's not as change savvy. We don't go into the insurance industry because we're, trying to change the world, but how do we be open to change? Communicate, communicate, communicate. How do you make sure you're getting enough communication? If I'm sitting in my own little bubble and my boss or my organization isn't connecting with me, letting me know what's happening, it can be even more stressful for us. So if you're a leader or you want to reach out and say, look, we need more communications on a regular basis on what the organization's going through. I mean, have you laid off people? That's a big one. Not necessarily for you, it might be for a lot of your clients. How do you communicate what the plan is around a certain thing? Or you don't know what it is and you're working on it, that's good too. So in terms of, I'm just going to put the rest up there. I can't see it on my screen here, but setting aside each day to talk to people. So each leader should reach out to each of their team one-on-one at least once a week. It could be in any which way that makes sense. I think some of the language is really important. And some of you are going to be feeling more confident in your resilience than others, saying things like, we've got this. We can do this. Come on, we can get through this. I know it's tough, but this is going to work out, because it is. 95% of the time, these things are going to work out. So how do we keep the enthusiasm up for some of our other team members that may not be quite feeling it? Okay. So, and delegating effectively. Lastly, I just want to finish on this piece. Under stress, and you've heard me speak of this before, many of you, we get triggered. Okay. Sometimes we are going to feel extremely stressed out, and everything people say seems to bother us. We're going to feel triggered. We're going to feel it physically, emotionally, mentally. It's a fight or flight response. So a lot of us are in that heightened sense of anxiety, and it's exhausting, absolutely exhausting. So recognizing when you're feeling that way, this is when you need to take control of yourself, okay? Because you can say, I can't make that meeting, because you don't have to say, I just need a minute. Right? I just got to go for a walk. I'm feeling stressed right now. I need to go. So understanding where you are, recognizing that if you're in fight or flight response, you're not going to make the decisions quite the same way you would. So how do you calm yourself down? How do you take a moment? How do you get support from others? And in extreme situations, how do you reach out for the support that you need? How do you notice when other people are triggered or you think they're really stressed out? How do you reach out and help support them as well? We're all in this at least some point during our day. I don't know if anyone ever thinks that's different, but that's my take on this. Everyone, even the calmest people, are going to feel a bit of anxiety, stress, or just fight or flight response. It affects how we talk to our colleagues and how we work. No guilt, people. Take the time and take care of yourselves. So any other tips? I didn't get to read all the chat, so I'm going to go back after and have a quick look. Any quick takeaways in all that? Anything that you want to think was helpful that you want to move forward? I'm talking to lots of different teams. Any other suggestions, which I'm going to go through the chat and see all the great suggestions you guys had. So let me know what you liked in that session. If there's anything that you're thinking about doing a little differently, that will help me understand what's been helpful. So thank you, everyone. Stay safe, no guilt. I embrace it, and bring your home to work and your work to home. All right, thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Heather. And I'd also like to thank Becky from the New Brunswick Association, who's been on here helping me this morning. We really appreciate everything you've done. And for all our brokers, we do have a few more sessions coming up in the next few weeks. So thank you.